The sound.
The sound of.
The sounds of Suffolk.
And all the music you love.
BBC Radio Suffolk.
Hello, I'm Julie Reinger, and welcome to this very special programme celebrating the broadcasting career of Stephen Foster. Foz, as he's usually known, has been a fixture on Suffolk's airwaves for well over 40 years, from his early days as a teenager in hospital radio to his most recent slot as BBC Radio Suffolk's drive time presenter. Music has always been a huge part of Foz's life, and he's been a champion of so many local bands, pretty much from the day he first sat in front of a microphone. We'll be hearing from plenty of people he's met along the way, fellow broadcasters, contributors and musicians, all of whom have a story to tell about this radio legend. We'll also take a dip into the archives, remembering the times Foz caught up with Ed Sheeran and Rick Wakeman, and even catch a few moments when things didn't quite go according to plan. So do stay with me for the next hour or so. As the man himself would say, it really would be rude not to.
They got him on milk and alcohol. They got him on milk and alcohol.
Let's start right back in 1979, when Foz's beloved Dr. Feelgood had been riding high in the charts. Stephen himself began working at Radio Orwell, firstly as a freelance before joining the permanent staff as a journalist in 1981. Pretty quickly, though, music came a-calling, as fellow presenter Nick Cody remembers.
I worked with Stephen Foster for many years at Radio Orwell, but my earliest memory of him is in the early 80s, before I joined the station. He was a journalist in the newsroom at Orwell, but he also presented a programme called Platform, which was for teenagers. I'm not sure if the Headbangers Ball had been invented at that stage. And at the time, I was in one of the worst local rock bands ever, called Lie Stone Dead. And somehow I managed to get Foz to interview me and the singer, Nick Dobbs, for the programme. Well, he played our demo on air and even kept a straight face, which was good of him. And that gave everyone a good laugh, because we genuinely thought we were the next Marillion. Well, some while later, after I joined Orwell and Stephen had handed the rock show over to me, we just naturally ended up working together on rock music events in Suffolk, and we were often asked to compare live shows. These always ended up very messy because we both really liked our beer at the time, and there was never any shortage of listeners who wanted to buy us drinks. One year we did a 12-hour gig at the Grand Hotel in Felixstowe, where Foz was introducing the upstairs bands and I was doing downstairs. We were both trying to remain very cool, calm and collected, but the drinks flowed and it all got very silly. We got Saxon to play the Ipswich Corn Exchange for charity, and we even worked on the Mildenhall Rock and Blues Festival, where we took turns at introducing the acts, but it was so hot that day, I remember I actually slept through most of it.
Foz lost no time in making the most of his contacts in the local music world. Here's musician and promoter James Partridge.
My first encounters with Foz were as a result of my working at Parrot Records in the early 1980s, when he was at Radio Orwell. He was a regular customer in the shop and often had to buy new stuff to play on air because he didn't get sent everything he wanted. And he bought a lot. I used to listen to his show Platform from time to time, as during this show he was more adventurous with the playlist than the average local radio jockey. I mentioned to him one day that I was disappointed that he never played much punk or post-punk material, and I wondered why that was. "Well," he said, "it's not really on my radar. I don't know enough about it. Why don't you come and do it?" And so my bluff was called, and I was now a radio presenter, albeit extremely part-time and paid only in vinyl.
Towards the end of his time at Radio Orwell, Foz met Nick Risby, who has his own theory as to why a change of radio station might have been needed.
I first met Foz back in the late 1980s when we worked together for a short while at Radio Orwell in the dungeons of Electric House. And I can remember our programme controller at the time said to Foz that when he was speaking on the radio, he should pretend he had a coat hanger in his mouth. I think that was probably the final straw that broke the camel's back, and it was really commercial radio's loss that became BBC Radio Suffolk's gain.
So it was time to move to the BBC, and Radio Suffolk's long-serving engineer David Butcher remembers how those early days may not have quite provided the exciting career move Foz would have wished.
Foz first started at BBC Radio Suffolk fairly soon after we went on air in the very early 90s, and he joined us from Radio Orwell, and he was the first person to come across from our local commercial rivals, as it were. He started with us as business producer, and as part of that he had to present a programme called Business Matters every Thursday evening between 7 and 8. He tried to make it sound interesting, but to be honest with you, the subject material did sometimes defeat him. And I'll never forget one particular Thursday evening, there was a group of us up in the newsroom, and we decided to play a little joke on him. So there must have been 4 or 5 of us at the news desk, all in our chairs, heads on the desks, fast asleep, or at least that's what we were pretending to be, snoring sounds coming from all of us. And he came up, having finished presenting the programme, saw us, took one look, and I have to say the language he used was not the sort of thing you'd want to hear broadcast.
It wasn't long before Foz was able to bring his great knowledge and experience of the local music scene to the airwaves of BBC Radio Suffolk. The Suffolk Blues programme became his first outlet, and guitarist Tony Vines remembers only too well how valuable such exposure could be to local acts such as the Mean Red Spiders.
My yoga treated you so mean.
I first met Foz, in the early days of the Mean Red Spiders. He took to our band, championed us, put us on the radio, had us in for sessions. He really was terrific, and he's been a great friend to me, had me in for sessions on my own. One of the things I would say is without Foz, the Mean Red Spiders would never have gone to the levels that we got to. It was purely down to him and his total hard work and believing in us and championing us that made it all happen. So yeah, Foz, you're a gent, you're an absolute star.
Baby, here I am, arms open wide.
Foz didn't just limit his attention to the blues, far from it in fact, as there's not really any style of music he's not a fan of. This was particularly evident when it came to curating major festival events such as Ipswich Music Day. Here are 3 local musicians with their own memories and experiences, starting firstly with Tony Shevlin.
There's no doubt in my mind that Foz has done more than anyone else in the region to help promote local music and musicians, and in particular original music and musicians. He'll interview you about your new record or upcoming gig. He'll have you come play live on his show. Or he'll play the new single or tracks off the album and help you promote it. And then there's Ipswich Music Day. I've played the BBC stage in various guises over the years. And what with the quick changeovers, it can be quite a chaotic affair. You've got roadies running around changing mics, bands getting gear off stage, bands getting gear on stage, guitarists looking for spare batteries, drummers looking for stick bags. It can be quite unnerving. And you look across at Foz, he's totally unflappable, totally professional and completely calm. And many a time he's caught my eye, given me just a little nod of recognition, and you think to yourself, yeah, it'll be fine.
Hi, it's Mike Rushmore here, aka Ed Chef. I've been really lucky to count Stephen Foster as a very good friend for many years now. First met him when he was at Radio Orwell, believe it or not, when a band I was in was releasing a single. He was working hard on behalf of local bands even then. I've since worked with him on Suffolk Mini Blues Fests and Stowe Blues with great pleasure and great success. He's brought several major blues acts to town, especially his beloved Dr. Feelgood, of course, and curator of a fantastic stage at Music Day. I only managed to corpse him once when Soul Kitchen were playing there. He asked me how I'd describe the colour of the weird shirt I was wearing. I described it as a miscellany, which was followed by a very gratifying 30 seconds of silence.
It's David Booth from The Recording Booth and Bayfield Booth, The Flow and Alone Me and Springett Booth and Songs from the Blue House. all of which Foz has been amazing at supporting over the years. I think it was around 2002 when myself and Sarah, when we were going under the name of Springett Booth, first came up to Ipswich to do a live session at Broadcasting House. And I think it was the following year then we first came up to Ipswich Music Day. And both of those things were slightly surprising at the time because we were very much an Essex-based band. And I think Foz probably broke a few rules by getting us up there. So yeah, since then, about 18 years later, here we are, still doing sessions, still getting support from Foz on air, getting our releases, our independent releases, heard on the radio, which is so important, and which is why Foz's show has been such an important part of many, many musicians' lives in the region.
Of course, with Foz's love of the blues, he was bound to have wanted to support and promote the bands who were making his sort of music. His passion for Dr. Feelgood is well known. However, other nationally known blues acts are certainly on the Foz radar. Here's Mark Feltham, who's the harmonica player from the South London blues rock band 9 Below Zero.
Steve's been a big champion of our band 9 Below Zero when we go up to Suffolk and work up there. And not only does he conduct the interviews from the studio or on the phone, he comes to the shows as well. And he has a great knowledge of music as well. He's like an encyclopedia. And quite often when I've sat with him a few times, I always ask him, who have you been interviewing with? Who have you been talking to recently? And he'll come up with, I spoke to David Coverdale, or I spoke to someone else. And he's always got these interesting stories on people that he's seen or had a chat with over the phone in the studio. It's a real shame that we don't have more guys like himself at the BBC around the regionals, because I do put it down to him that we have got quite a good following up in the East Anglia, around that area. It really has all been down to him and his love of music. And that's what it's about. He likes R&B, he likes a bit of blues, he likes the feel-goods, he likes us, and it makes it all the more easy for us to work when you've got someone that actually lives and breathes his music like he does, as well as having that beautiful delivery of the typical BBC voice. I often wondered why he wasn't a superstar up at Regent Street, a UK figure rather than a regional figure, because he's just got it. He's just got everything. And for us as musicians, professional working musicians, he's an absolute godsend. He has been for us anyway.
Now, at this stage, you might be thinking that Stephen Foster is nothing but the consummate professional for whom nothing ever goes wrong. Well, just occasionally, that's not quite the case. I've also not yet mentioned his schoolboy sense of humour, which often leaves him and those around him in stitches.
Email radiosuffolk@bbc.co.uk.
It's Stephen Foster on Drive Time. That's not what you should have heard, but oh dear, I've got to keep myself on my toes here, haven't I? Maureen, you're a dream, aren't you?
It's
I didn't even ask one question there, you were off.
Oh, I'm sorry. Was I supposed to wait for you to poke me, so to speak?
You'll have a long wait, Maureen.
I thought it was my lucky day. He's gone pink.
Just the thought of it. What do you call a male horse over 4 years of age?
Stallion?
Just like myself, a stallion. Thank you very much. You don't laugh, Trevor. I'm being deadly serious. If only I was.
There is something to
usually
do
on the air
with the male horse. There is something to do with castration in there, but we won't talk about that now.
No, don't please. It'll make me go all strange.
Well, you compared it to yourself, so I thought I'd raise that first.
It's one of those words, castration. It
makes you wiggle, doesn't it?
It does, yes. You just check it's still there.
Oh, dear me.
Trevor, here's your second one. It's
you made me blush now.
I thought of you earlier today. I was having a cup of coffee in a coffee bar in town, reading the Daily Mail, actually, for once.
Right.
The headline, Nudity on Sea. Where did you do your panto?
I can assure you, sir, that I was well covered.
Boss, what have you got on drive time?
Well, on drive time tonight, we've got this young man who's looking... No, Bob here.
Oh, him!
He's not as old as you think, you know.
Botox does wonders, doesn't it?
What at both ends?
That's a disgraceful thought, isn't it? It really has spoiled my weekend already.
You can't stop the wrinkles, mate. You can't.
I've got to go now.
He's gone. That's the first time I've ever seen him corpse on air.
Excerpts from Foz's broadcasting career when things may not quite have always gone as planned. You're listening to BBC Radio Suffolk and to a celebration of the broadcasting career of Stephen Foster. We've heard earlier about how much Foz has been involved in the summer music festivals in Suffolk, occasions such as Latitude, Folk East and Maverick, which have given him the opportunity to rub shoulders with some household names. One particularly memorable occasion was the Harvest Festival at Jimmy's Farm back in 2010. The up-and-coming singer-songwriter Foz had playing live seems to have done rather well since.
Well, it ain't no use to sit down and wonder why, babe, if you don't know by now. Well, it ain't no use to sit down and wonder why, babe, it'll never do somehow. When your rooster crows at the break of dawn, out your window and I'll be gone. You're the reason I'm traveling on, so don't think twice, it's alright. Well, it ain't no use in turning on your light, babe, the light I never knowed. Well, it ain't no use in turning on your light, babe, I'm on the dark side of the road. Still, I was wondering what I could do or say to try and make you change your mind and stay. Still, you're not listening to me anyway, so don't think twice, it's alright. Well, it ain't no use in calling out my name, girl, like you never done before. Well, it ain't no use in calling out my name, girl, I can't hear you anymore. I'm a-sitting and wondering, walking down a road. I once loved a woman, a child I am told. She gave her my heart, but she wanted my soul. But don't think twice, it's alright. And so long, honey babe, where I'm bound, I can't tell. And goodbye is too good a word, babe, so I'll just say fairly well. But I ain't saying you treated me unkind. You could have done better, but I don't mind. You just kind of wasted my precious time, so don't think twice, it's alright.
So much deserved round of applause for Ed Sheeran. Don't Think Twice, It's Alright, the Bob Dylan song. We've got some wonderful acts appearing later, including the headlining act tonight, who is Newton Faulkner. We had the great pleasure of meeting Newton at the Latitude Festival here in Suffolk this time last year. Well, he's back in the county to perform on the main stage here later this evening, and he's on site right now. We're popping over after 12 to treat us to some of his material. The young man doing likewise right now is Ed Sheeran. Newton Faulkner, is he a bit of a hero of yours?
I think he's pretty good, yeah.
Yeah.
He's good, yeah.
You've seen him live a few times?
Yeah, I saw him about 4 years ago open up for Nizlopi at Coco, and yeah, I thought he was great back then. So.
and the amazing way he uses loops and all this technology.
Yeah, he's just started using that actually. He's now on the foot pedal. He uses like a organ thing, I think. But yeah, it's quite cool.
And do you use some of that sort of stuff?
No, it's all a bit complicated for me. I don't really have the mental capacity to do that. I can click one button and that's
Well, he
about it.
probably said the same thing a few years ago, didn't he?
Yeah, but he can do a lot more on the guitar, so he's probably got a bigger mental space.
Right. You're going to play us another of your own songs now, because
Yes.
you pride yourself on your own material. You did do a great cover of the Bob Dylan track, but first and foremost in your life is your own music.
100%, yeah. This song's called UNI.
UNI. This is Ed Sheeran here on BBC Radio Suffolk.
Found your hairband on my bedroom floor, the only evidence that you'd been here before. And I don't get waves of missing you anymore. They're more like tsunami tides in my eyes, never getting dry, so I get high, smoke away the days, ever sleep with the light on. Weeks pass in the blink of an eye, and I'm still drunk at the end of the night. Don't drink like everybody else, I did to forget things about myself. Stumbling forward with a headspin, I got mine's with you, but my heart's just not. So am I close to you anymore? It's over, and there's no chance that we'll work it out. Oh, you and I ended over you and I. And I said that's fine, but you're the only one that knows I lied. You and I ended over you and I. And I said that's fine, but you're the only one that knows I lied. Everybody said we'd be together forever, but I know that I never wanna settle down, come around, break up the love like Lego now. Never wanna turn into another like you, sleep with my thoughts, dance with my views. Everything's great, not everything's sure, but you live in your halls and I live in a tour bus. Now I'm in a position to be another stalker, let everything I say seems to all sound awkward. Like our last kiss, it was perfect, we were nervous on the surface, and I'm always saying every day that it was worth it. Pain is only relevant if it still hurts. I forget like an elephant, or we can use a sedative and go back to the day we fell in love just on our first kiss. So am I close to you anymore? It's over, and there's no chance that we'll work it out. Oh, you and I ended over you and I. And I said that's fine, but you're the only one that knows I lied. You and I ended over you and I. And I said that's fine, but you're the only one that knows I lied. Oh. Because if I was gonna go somewhere, I'd be there by now, and maybe I can let myself down. Oh, and I'm thinking that I'm unaware. I keep my feet on the ground and keep looking around to make sure I'm not the only one to feel low.
Ed Sheeran, fantastic, and he'll be on stage on the Village Green stage that's being built at 12:30. And just very briefly, Ed, I mean, do you prepare any differently for a big appearance like this?
I'll have a bit of food. I think I usually don't eat before I play, but I'm quite hungry, so I think that'll be me.
Getting nervous?
Not really, because Suffolk's like always really nice and really warm and welcoming. So I mean, if it was any other place, then yeah. But this is home, so it's all good.
And what for you after this? Got much mapped out?
What's happening? Tomorrow I'm in the studio for 3 days with a dude called Mark Hill, who used to be the Artful Dodger, did the whole of Craig David, but we're writing for Joe McElderry's album. So there's that, and then I've got a couple of gigs next week, and then there's the Example tour, obviously. So yeah, it's all go at the moment.
We wish you continued success. We're right behind you at BBC Radio Suffolk, as you well know, so thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me.
That's Ed Sheeran, who joined Foz on BBC Radio Suffolk one sunny Sunday morning back in September 2010. Of course, Foz's broadcasting career is not just about music, and he's always tried to shine a light on the wider local art scene, as well as sport in Suffolk. He gathered together a collection of loyal, regular contributors who were to be heard most weeks. For example, Lynn Mortimer, who shared her picks for the best TV programmes we could catch.
Stephen Foster, A man for whom no double entendre is left unturned. His mischievous sense of humour floored me more than once in our Monday and Friday TV sessions. For example, he would innocently remind me that as a birthday treat one year, my husband took me up the Shard. He is a man consumed by an enthusiasm and love for music. I am a woman who loves classical music and gave up pop and rock circa 1973. As TV writer for the East Anglian Daily Times and Ipswich Star, I was well versed in what was on the box. Stephen, not so much. I like to think we educated one another over the years. Just a little. I know he doesn't like to talk about it, but I understand he once saw Billy Joel live in concert in the US of A. A skilled interviewer might be able to get him to talk about it. The other thing I know for sure is that Foz will continue to support new and emerging music artists. He is a friend to so many people, and I'm proud to be one among them.
That piece of music was heard pretty regularly too, as Foz indulged his passion for local speedway. A frequent contributor was Kevin Jolly of the Mildenhall Fen Tigers.
Foz was a big help to me personally and to the club, and a big supporter of the club in his time and efforts that he gave towards the club. He always gave us good coverage on Radio Suffolk. He was very, very helpful in daytime announcing at the meetings, and if we had social functions, he would always try and get along and help out there if he could. A very busy man, obviously, with his business interests and the musical side and everything, but he was absolutely outstanding for me personally, and now is a good friend of mine. I know he likes his sport, his football and his speedway. Seen him at the football many times. And, just a great help and a privilege to have met him, worked with him, and still know him and keeping in touch to this day. So a true Suffolk legend, I think.
You can't really run a local radio station without giving your listeners a regular dose of travel news, and in more recent times, Barry Lewis became a drive time regular.
I started presenting the afternoon travel on Radio Suffolk, including Foz's Drive Time show about 5 years ago, I think it was, and it was quite quickly that we realised that we shared a sense of humour and also a passion for music, particularly of a certain vintage, shall we say. And so the banter kind of built up between us, and we were trying to outdo each other with our useless musical trivia knowledge. And then quickly after that, I think Foz started posing me music trivia questions every day. My challenge would be to get a full house of big Foz points, which I often did, and it seemed to capture the imagination of the audience as well, and the listeners joined in and often suggested subjects and also posed questions for me as well.
In 2018, we came up with the idea of staging a secret gig where our listeners were invited to come along to a special show where the name of the band playing was only revealed a few days beforehand. For that inaugural gig, we booked top Electric Light Orchestra tribute band ELO Encounter. Naturally, as Foz and Barry Lewis had become quite the pop quiz double act by this time, there was the perfect opportunity for a public encounter between the two pop trivia brains.
Martin Donald here, guitar player with ELO Encounter. How well I remember that very first secret gig we did in Ipswich. 1st of November, I think it was a cold day in 2018. Despite the temperature, the audience gave us a very warm welcome, and I think we can say we all had a brilliant night. Good luck for the future, Foz. 2020 has been completely destroyed as far as live music is concerned, so let's hope for a better 2021.
Don't
Foz's Secret Gigs, that was a perfect opportunity to transfer our musical rivalry onto the live stage, where I have to admit he got the better of me. Well, the fact is I was too kind and asked far too many easy questions, and his specialist subjects being Dr. Feelgood. I mean, come on, he wasn't going to get any of those wrong, was he? It was also lovely at the Secret Gigs to meet so many listeners in person that seemed to enjoy the banter that Foz and I had in the afternoons on the radio, but also really got behind and got into the spirit of our pop music trivia rivalry. And there to see it live on the stage, they seem to enjoy it anyway.
Jack here, lead singer with the ELO Encounter, extending a huge thank you from myself and everyone else in the band. In contrast to my bandmate Martin's chilly recollection, the show that came to mind was a scorching hot Ipswich Music Day of July 2018. A fantastic gig filled with a wonderfully welcoming crowd, and very clearly before the days of social distancing and lockdowns. Your listeners will no doubt be aware of what a huge trivia head you are, so I'd just like to leave you with this one final question. What colour underpants am I wearing?
That's the music of ELO Encounter, who played Foz's first secret gig in 2018. This is BBC Radio Suffolk, and we're celebrating the many years that Stephen Foster has been broadcasting to the listeners of Suffolk and beyond. Local music is and always has been the man's passion, so let's return to that theme. We've already heard from James Partridge, the record shop owner. Here's James in his more recent role as local musician.
Foz was always supportive of any bands that I was in, even if he didn't understand or like what we were doing. In the end, I think he was most taken with the last band that I was in, Songs from the Blue House. Our first ever performance in, I guess, 2003 was a live session with him at BBC Suffolk, and many more such sessions followed. We were pleasant to listen to broadly, had a very fluid lineup, and were always dangerously under-rehearsed and somewhat anarchic. Foz, however, was always unfazable, whether there was 3 of us in the band or 8. Probably because he knew that his engineer Dave Butcher would have to do all the difficult stuff.
Another Songs from the Blue House band member is Shane Kirk.
I mean, I've been interviewed so many times by Foz, but there's always been this microphone, like the foam cover in between us. So for a while I started to imagine he actually had one of those foam noses, like Fozzie Bear or something. And of course, he has many times done the quiz night. I mean, there was one for Children in Need. And we all reasoned that we were guaranteed 1 point at least if we just wrote Dr. Feelgood in one of the categories in any of the quiz rounds. And sure enough, in the intros round, it came up, I think it was 4th, and the whole hall cheered. I don't think I've been to very many gigs in Ipswich or Felixstowe or Bury or Stowmarket where at some point I haven't turned around and Foz has been in the corner and just sort of raised a pint. I don't know if the man sleeps. If he does, he must dream about music.
Driving up to Tinkerbrook in a beat-up escort van, through the rough of Roundwood with a 410 in my hand.
It's no coincidence that some of Foz's closest friendships are amongst those who are active in the local music scene. One such man was Matt Bayfield, originally half of the Broadside Boys duo, and then more recently a part of the Bayfield Booth Collective. Sadly, Matt passed away in 2019. His wife Kelly tells us more of their story.
Jackie was a keeper. He woke me up at 5. Walked the path through fields of grass with my granddad by my side. For 40
This is Kelly Bayfield, singer and songwriter. Over the years, Foz has championed all of my original collaborations, from Chasing Storms, Kev Walford, Steamboat Union, Drew Young, and most recently, of course, Bayfield Booth. I think it's impossible to convey the significance of Foz's unwavering support of the local music scene. No matter what stage of your career you are, whether you're just starting out as a performer or you're a legendary global veteran of the music business, in Foz's mind you all play just as an important role as each other, and he treats you as such, whether it's inviting you to the studio, introducing you on stage at a festival, writing reviews, and just generally supporting you wherever and whenever he can. He was a huge supporter of my late husband Matt's too, comparing at his and David Booth's album launch in May 2019, and I think it's fair to say they had a pretty special relationship. Matt was well known for his impressions. As the saying goes, imitation is the sincerest form of flattery, but I think he clearly looked up to Foz the most because it was definitely his finest impression for sure. I probably have a recording of it somewhere in the archives, but in the meantime, here is a little clip of their usual banter from a visit to the studio to promote that launch for A New Way On, when Matt threatened to turn the tables and interview Foz instead.
So we're live with Foz on Facebook World. So first we get to interview you, Foz, for a short while.
Yeah. Oh, I don't like that.
No,
no. I'd rather be asking you the questions.
Okay, all right. We won't bother then. That's not that interesting to be fair.
I'll put my headphones on.
Foz is going to put his radio DJ voice back on.
Yeah, I'm gonna look the part. If nothing else.
You do look the part.
Thank you. I meant to have a listen.
Now you're about to see an absolute pro in operation here, everybody. Okay, Foz.
Where's that then?
Foz. Leslie Dolphin's coming in.
Oh right. Okay. I was going to say I'm glad somebody is, because it ain't me, is it?
All through that time of the music that we did as Bayfield Booth, and before that when Matt was doing the Broadside Boys, and all through the charity work he did with Kelly for the brain tumour charity, Foz was just so unbelievably supportive, above and beyond the call of duty.
Jackie was a keeper. He woke me up at 5. Walked the path through fields of grass with my granddad by my side. For 40 years he toiled with honesty and grace. A cobbled man who worked the land on the Glenham Hall estate.
That's David Booth, and the song there is Keeper Jack by Bayfield Booth. Let's now dip again into the BBC Radio Suffolk archives. This time it's back to Christmas 2019 as rock royalty in the shape of Rick Wakeman joined Foz in our studios here to play live. Back in the late 60s and early 70s, Rick played as a session musician for a variety of famous artists. His memories of playing piano for David Bowie made for compelling listening.
I've met Dave first in 1968, we met. I became mates, and then I did Space Oddity with him, and then it's interesting, there's a bit of confusion, because Space Oddity, if you can find the original release, which is on the Philips label, it is believed to be, and I'm pretty certain, the very first British stereo single ever. And he fought for that because they didn't want to do it in stereo. And I was actually in the studio when it was discussed from the people from Philips. They said, no, mono's fine. Everything's in mono on singles. And he went, it won't be. It'll all be stereo. They went, well, no, just do it in mono, like, because all the jukeboxes that time, they're all basically mono. He went, no, it's stereo. And they said, well, deliver it in mono. He said, you'll have it in stereo or you don't have it. And they said, you're contracted to do it. He said, I'm contracted to deliver you a track. And that's what you'll get, in stereo. And they did put it out. And as I say, it was the very first stereo single on the Philips label. But then there was, it was 1969, I think it came out in July. And then they had the terrible disaster in America, and it was withdrawn immediately. And that was actually on David's recommendation that it was withdrawn. And I think it got to about number 5 in the UK at that time. And ironically, I think it was 1975 it was released again, and that's when it went to number one, which was really bizarre so far after the event. But then I did lots of stuff. There was an album which was called the Space Oddity album, and then also renamed the David Bowie album. It had more names than Lloyd's, and I did Memory of a Free Festival and Wild Eyed Boy from Free Cloud, which I loved. The orchestral version is still my favourite thing that he ever did. That was just before we did Hunky Dory, and then I did a bit of Ziggy before I joined Yes. And then David and I were neighbours in Switzerland. I say neighbours, we lived up the same mountain. But to be fair, everybody in Switzerland lives up a mountain, so it's nothing unusual. And for about 5 years. So we used to meet a lot and put the world to rights. And then in the 80s, I did Absolute Beginners with him and a few other bits and pieces. And we remained friends, even though we didn't see each other that often, because he was in America most of the time. But a massive influence, not just on me, but on everybody, really. I mean, he was light years ahead of everybody. And in the studio, light years ahead of everybody that I worked with so many people in the studio, nobody even came close to him. And he had the great producers as well. I mean, with Tony Visconti, Gus Dudgeon he had for a bit, and Ken Scott.
Ken Scott, responsible for a wonderful Supertramp album, Crime of the Century. Yeah,
Ken Scott was great. He actually worked initially as an engineer at Trident Studios, but ludicrously talented, and the really clever engineers did a lot of the production. They ended up doing it because they were that clever and good hit. And then obviously what happens is then the artists go, well, hold on, you carry on, you're producing this album, really doing it. And Ken, he did some stuff for me. He did a couple of the Six Wives tracks on the Six Wives album he did for me, and we're still in touch. In fact, I got an email from him this morning, funny enough, so I have to reply to him and meet up with him. Clever guy. There were some clever people around at that time, and David Bowie was brilliant at surrounding himself with the right people,
including your good self.
Well, I think I was very fortunate to be. I think the expression is preparation met opportunity.
Give us an example of your Bowie work, if you don't mind, because I'm like a kid in the sweet shop here, Rick, as you know.
Well, Space Odyssey, I actually played an instrument called the mellotron, but it's a lovely... David wrote fantastic tunes, fabulous tunes, and again, to play to a very adaptable. And I've done a lot with Space Oddity. There was a great version by the astronaut Chris Hadfield, who was on the Mir space station, and he recorded on the space station a version of Space Oddity, which David loved, and it was released for charity and made a lot of money. I'm very lucky. I know Chris Hadfield very well. He's a Canadian astronaut, because I'm a part of a big thing called Starmus, which is all about music and astronauts. So I've been very lucky to have met every astronaut that's walked on the moon and all that kind of thing. Chris Hadfield, we did a big thing last year for the 50th for the 50th anniversary of people going to the moon. And Chris was there, and he said, as you're literally the only other person there who played on the original, and I said, do you fancy doing it together? So we actually did it live on stage. It's on YouTube somewhere, I think, because obviously somebody held a phone up somewhere and it's there. But it's great. So I've done a version. I think I'm the only person to have done two versions of Space Odyssey, one with David Bowie and the other one with Chris Hadfield. But it's a great tune.
Rick Wakeman there playing live for Stephen Foster back in 2019. From the sublime to the ridiculous, never has this phrase been more true. Regular listeners will be aware of Foz making reference to the Marquis of Marks Tay, driving around in his little pink bubble car whenever an ABBA track makes it into his playlist. I think we really should give the Marquis himself, sounding suspiciously like Luke Deal, the right of reply.
Ah, Mr. Foster. It's the Marquis of Marks Tay here. I can't believe you're heading into your last weekend of broadcasting on BBC Radio Suffolk. Who's going to send me off to sleep now? Despite the fact that you're Suffolk's #1 Alan Carr tribute act, I, along with many, many others, namely your mum, dad and Maggie, will miss your dulcet tones coming out of the wireless. You've been an outstanding broadcaster, and it pains me to say it, but along the way you've also been entertaining. I can't remember when though, but someone will jog my memory. Your music knowledge is almost encyclopedic and puts the rest of us to shame. And I, for one, will miss that fountain of useless information. But now it's time to focus on the future and set yourself new targets. I'm sure you've got a book in you, albeit a short read, and once you've settled into your retirement home and we're back to some sense of normality, I'd be more than happy to come and pick you up and take you out for a pint or two. Is it still a snowball with a cherry you like? But more importantly, do you know anyone who could lend us a pink bubble car? Because I know you have this fascination with this type of vehicle, and I think it would be fabulous, darling, if we could borrow one to go out in, because we can't have you walking very far with those varicose veins, can we? All the best, my friend. Stay safe, stay well, and more importantly, stay secure. Good luck, Alan. It's been a blast, and I will definitely miss you. Who is this chap anyway?
Our time looking back at Foz's 40-year broadcasting career here on BBC Radio Suffolk is drawing to a close, and there were no shortage of people queuing up to say what a wonderful fellow he is. Some were even prepared to do so without needing payment. Here, with the help of Foz's favourite band, Dr. Feelgood, is but a small selection of people who love him and are sorry to see him leave the BBC.
DJ, traffic announcer, newsreader, Foz is part Kid Jensen, part John Peel, part Bob Harris, but better because he was ours.
Where at the sun that I like, beautiful way that woman walks, and at the sun that I better, there's the way she baby talks. She does it right. She does it right.
I have to say, Stephen is one of the most genuine and conscientious people I've met in the broadcasting business, always very fair and balanced in the way he presents the facts. And he's done a tremendous amount of good for local music by promoting musicians, bands and concerts. So, Stephen, you'll be missed at BBC Radio Suffolk, and I just want to wish you all the very best of luck in your next adventure.
Quite often with BBC presenters going around the country, everything is so transient, and where you'll have one in place 1 month, we'll go back there a couple of 9 months later after the next tour and the new album, and there's a different presenter that don't know nothing about the band. And because of that longevity and that whole, you know, like the old record companies where they'd stay with bands for 5 or 6 albums, he stayed with us all along because he's been there for so long, and it's worked for us and it's worked for him. We will miss him very, very much as a human being as well, and I hope he still continues to come to some of the shows after he's finished his professional career in radio.
Basically, he's a consummate professional, champion of live music and local creative arts of all kinds, also a fine journalist and very funny chap.
Foz, from the bottom of my heart, I want to thank you sincerely for everything you have done for us over the years, and I wish you all the best in the next stage of your career. Thanks.
So, thank you, Foz, basically, and I hope you enjoy whatever your next move is in your career, and I very much hope that we bump into you at some gig or festival in 2021. Fingers crossed. Cheers.
Foz is probably the most knowledgeable person on music that I know. If there's something you want to know about music, any type of music, any genre, don't Google it, Foz it, because guarantee he'll know. His knowledge is incredible, as it is of Speedway. Oh, and wine and beer. Foz is... you can't use this word for everybody, but Foz is a radio legend. Absolute legend. A gentleman, one of the nicest guys you'd ever meet. Good luck, Foz. We're going to miss you.
So it's the fondest of farewells to a man that I have thoroughly enjoyed working with over the years and who I will really miss. We've shared so much fun and laughter and maybe an odd bit of on-air naughtiness too. And I think he may have finally forgiven me for that incident all those years ago when we were both in Bury St Edmunds for the turning on of the Christmas lights. It was very exciting, with Foz and Jules presenting a live, simultaneous broadcast on BBC Radio Suffolk and Look East. But a last-minute change of timing resulted in me racing onto the stage and literally snatching the microphone out of his hands for the final 3, 2, 1. Not quite how we'd rehearsed it, and he may have mentioned it just a few times since. I shall leave you with one final selection of those moments which only live radio can bring.
I've often looked at them and thought, well, how can you tell
Yeah.
how old they are? Now we know, Philippa.
And you're going to have to get a bigger tank for yours now.
Yes, well, I've got such a small one that, Goldfish, Philippa. Phil Vickery is the chef husband of which ITV daytime television presenter?
Oh, what's her name, Brian?
Last time I looked, she was quite a large lady, but
With a small head.
she is ITV's answer to
Yeah.
Rachel Sloane. Although Rachel's a lot smaller than her now.
I'm really impressed with your wrist action today, you know, all
Hey.
those high points.
It
Look
has
at
been
that.
said.
Goodness me.
Yes, I'm
I've
pretty
never
good with the
known-
dice today.
I've never known something so high come out of that, yes, pot.
I was
right.
at Sygate Lane Primary and then to Cobblestone.
Ah, right. Yeah, I went to Cobblestone as well.
Did you? What year were you in?
Oh, dear. 1974, 5.
Oh, I was there from 71 to 76.
Ah, you were there then.
Yeah, we may know
There
each
you
other,
go.
Judith.
Didn't share rubbers, did we?
I beg your pardon, Judith.
Pencil rubbers.
I'm with you.
Oh, do make me blush now.
Me too. Is sacrificing her clothes for the sake of art for the first time in her career.
Oh,
They didn't try to get you to do that, did they?
No, thank goodness.
Would you bear all on stage?
No, I'm not opposed to a bit of nudity on stage, but certainly I'd spare the public my cellulite and flabby bits, I can assure you.
Please.
My bottom looks like the moon.
Oh.
And I think at that point I will say goodbye.
There are people eating at this point as well, Julie.
I know.
Oh, dear.
No nudity on the weather tonight or any time.
Thank you for that. We'll see you again tomorrow.
No, thank you.
No, thank you, Julie. See you later. Bye-bye.
This celebration of the broadcasting career of Stephen Foster was presented by Julie Reinger and produced by David Butcher and Chloe Stanton.